What is philosophy? Introduction. The question, then. The question, what is philosophy, can perhaps be posed only late in life, with the arrival of old age and the time for speaking concretely. In fact, the bibliography on the nature of philosophy is very limited. It is a question posed in a moment of quiet restlessness at midnight, when there is no longer anything to ask. It was asked before. It was always being asked, but too indirectly or obliquely. The question was too artificial, too abstract. Instead of being seized by it, those who asked the question set it out and controlled it in passing. They were not sober enough. There was too much desire to do philosophy to wonder what it was, except as a stylistic exercise. That point of non-style where one can finally say, "What is it I have been doing all my life?" had not been reached. There are times when old age produces not eternal youth, but a sovereign freedom, a pure necessity in which one enjoys a moment of grace between life and death, and in which all the parts of the machine come together to send into the future a feature that cuts across all ages. Titian, Turner, Monet. In old age, Turner acquired or won the right to take painting down a deserted path of no return that is indistinguishable from a final question. Vie de Ronsard could be said to mark both Chateaubriand's old age and the start of modern literature. Cinema, too, sometimes offers us its gifts of the third age, as when Ivans, for example, blends his laughter with the witch's laughter in The Howling Wind. Likewise, in philosophy, Kant's Critique of Judgment is an unrestrained work of old age, which his successors have still not caught up with. All the mind's faculties overcome their limits, the very limits that Kant had so carefully laid down in the works of his prime. We cannot claim such a status. Simply, the time has come for us to ask what philosophy is. We had never stopped asking this question previously, and we already had the answer, which has not changed. Philosophy is the art of forming, inventing, and fabricating concepts. But the answer not only had to take note of the question, it had to determine its moment, its occasion and circumstances, its landscapes and personae, its conditions and unknowns. It had to be possible to ask the question between friends, as a secret or a confidence, or as a challenge when confronting the enemy, and at the same time to reach that twilight hour when one distrusts even the friend. It is then that you say, "That's what it was, but I don't know if I really said it, or if I was convincing enough." And you realize that having said it or been convincing hardly matters because, in any case, that is what it is now. We will see that concepts need conceptual personae that play a part in their definition. Friend is one such persona that is even said to reveal the Greek origin of philosophy. Other civilizations had sages, but the Greeks introduced these friends who were not just more modest sages. The Greeks might seem to have confirmed the death of the sage and to have replaced him with philosophers, the friends of wisdom, those who seek wisdom but do not formally possess it. But the difference between the sage and the philosopher would not be merely one of degree, as on a scale. The old Oriental sage thinks, perhaps, in figures, whereas the philosopher invents and thinks the concept. Wisdom has changed a great deal. It is even more difficult to know what friend signifies, even and especially among the Greeks. Does it designate a type of competent intimacy, a sort of material taste and potentiality, like that of the joiner with wood? Is the potential of wood latent in the good joiner? Is he the friend of the wood? The question is important because the friend who appears in philosophy no longer stands for an extrinsic persona, an example or empirical circumstance, but rather for a presence that is intrinsic to thought, a condition of possibility of thought itself, a living category, a transcendental lived reality, un vécu transcendental. With the creation of philosophy, the Greeks violently forced the friend into a relationship that is no longer a relationship with an other, but one with an entity, an objectality, objectité, an essence. Plato's friend, but even more the friend of wisdom, of truth or the concept, like Philalethes and Theophilus. The philosopher is expert in concepts and in the lack of them. He knows which of them are not viable, which are arbitrary or inconsistent, which ones do not hold up for an instant. On the other hand, he also knows which are well-formed and attest to a creation, however disturbing or dangerous it may be. What does friend mean when it becomes a conceptual persona, or a condition for the exercise of thought? Or rather, are we not talking of the lover? Does not the friend reintroduce into thought a vital relationship with the other that was supposed to have been excluded from pure thought? Or again, is it not a matter of someone other than the friend or lover? For if the philosopher is the friend or lover of wisdom, is it not because he lays claim to wisdom, striving for it potentially rather than actually possessing it? Is the friend also the claimant then, and is that of which he claims to be the friend the thing to which he lays claim, but not the third party who, on the contrary, becomes a rival? Friendship would then involve competitive distrust of the rival as much as amorous striving toward the object of desire. The basic point about friendship is that the two friends are like claimant and rival, but who could tell them apart? It is in this first aspect that philosophy seems to be something Greek and coincides with the contribution of cities. The formation of societies of friends or equals, but also the promotion of relationships of rivalry between and within them, the contest between claimants in every sphere, in love, the games, tribunals, the judiciaries, politics, and even in thought, which finds its condition not only in the friend, but in the claimant and the rival. The dialectic Plato defined as amphisbatesis. It is the rivalry of free men, a generalized athleticism, the agon. Friendship must reconcile the integrity of the essence and the rivalry of claimants. Is this not too great a task? Friend, lover, claimant, and rival are transcendental determinations that do not for that reason lose their intense and animated existence in one persona or in several. When again today Maurice Blanchot, one of the rare thinkers to consider the meaning of the word friend in philosophy, takes up this question internal to the conditions of thought as such, does he not once more introduce new conceptual personae into the heart of the purest thought? But in this case, the personae are hardly Greek, arriving from elsewhere as if they had gone through a catastrophe that draws them toward new living relationships raised to the level of a priori characteristics, a turning away, a certain tiredness, a certain distress between friends that converts friendship itself to thought of the concept as distrust and infinite patience. The list of conceptual personae is never closed, and for that reason plays an important role in the evolution or transformations of philosophy. The diversity of conceptual personae must be understood without being reduced to the already complex unity of the Greek philosopher. The philosopher is the concept's friend. He is potentiality of the concept. That is, philosophy is not a simple art of forming, inventing, or fabricating concepts, because concepts are not necessarily forms, discoveries, or products. More rigorously, philosophy is the discipline that involves creating concepts. Does this mean that the friend is friend of his own creations? Or is the actuality of the concept due to the potential of the friend in the unity of creator and his double? The object of philosophy is to create concepts that are always new. Because the concept must be created, it refers back to the philosopher as the one who has it potentially, or who has its power and competence. It is no objection to say that creation is the prerogative of the sensory and the arts, since art brings spiritual entities into existence while philosophical concepts are also sensibilia. In fact, sciences, arts, and philosophies are all equally creative, although only philosophy creates concepts in the strict sense. Concepts are not waiting for us ready-made like heavenly bodies. There is no heaven for concepts. They must be invented, fabricated, or rather created, and would be nothing without their creator's signature. Nietzsche laid down the task of philosophy when he wrote, "Philosophers must no longer accept concepts as a gift, nor merely purify and polish them, but first make and create them, present them and make them convincing." Hitherto, one has generally trusted one's concepts as if they were a wonderful dowry from some sort of wonderland. But trust must be replaced by distrust, and philosophers must distrust most those concepts they did not create themselves. Plato was fully aware of this, even though he taught the opposite. Plato said that ideas must be contemplated, But first of all, he had to create the concept of idea. What would be the value of a philosopher of whom one could say, he has created no concepts, he has not created his own concepts? We can at least see what philosophy is not. It is not contemplation, reflection, or communication. This is the case even though it may sometimes believe it is one or other of these, as a result of the capacity of every discipline to produce its own illusions and to hide behind its own peculiar smokescreen. It is not contemplation, for contemplations are things themselves as seen in the creation of their specific concepts. It is not reflection, because no one needs philosophy to reflect on anything. It is thought that philosophy is being given a great deal by being turned into the art of reflection, but actually it loses everything. Mathematicians, as mathematicians, have never waited for philosophers before reflecting on mathematics, nor artists before reflecting on painting or music. So long as their reflection belongs to their respective creation, it is a bad joke to say that this makes them philosophers. Nor does philosophy find any final refuge in communication, which only works under the sway of opinions in order to create consensus and not concepts. The idea of a Western democratic conversation between friends has never produced a single concept. The idea comes, perhaps, from the Greeks, but they distrusted it so much and subjected it to such harsh treatment that the concept was more like the ironical soliloquy bird that surveyed, survolait, the battlefield of destroyed rival opinions, the drunken guests at the banquet. Philosophy does not contemplate, reflect, or communicate, although it must create concepts for these actions or passions. Contemplation, reflection, and communication are not disciplines but machines for constituting universals in every discipline. The universals of contemplation, and then of reflection, are like two illusions through which philosophy has already passed in its dream of dominating the other disciplines. Objective idealism and subjective idealism. Moreover, it does no credit to philosophy for it to present itself as a new Athens by falling back on universals of communication that would provide rules for an imaginary mastery of the markets and the media, into subjective idealism. Every creation is singular, and the concept as a specifically philosophical creation is always a singularity. The first principle of philosophy is that universals explain nothing, but must themselves be explained. To know oneself, to learn to think, to act as if nothing was self-evident, wondering that there is being. These and many other determinations of philosophy create interesting attitudes, however tiresome they may be in the long run. But even from a pedagogical point of view, they do not constitute a well-defined occupation or precise activity. On the other hand, the following definition of philosophy can be taken as being decisive: knowledge through pure concepts. But there is no reason to oppose knowledge through concepts and the construction of concepts within possible experience on the one hand, and through intuition on the other. For according to the Nietzschean verdict, you will know nothing through concepts unless you have first created them, that is, constructed them in an intuition specific to them, a field, a plane, and a ground that must not be confused with them, but that shelters their seeds and the personae who cultivate them. Constructivism requires every creation to be a construction on a plane that gives it an autonomous existence. To create concepts is, at the very least, to make something. This alters the question of philosophy's use or usefulness, or even of its harmfulness. To whom is it harmful? Many problems hurry before the hallucinating eyes of an old man who sees all sorts of philosophical concepts and conceptual personae confronting one another. First, concepts are and remain signed. Aristotle's substance, Descartes' cogito, Leibniz's monad, Kant's condition, Schelling's power, Bergson's duration, durée. But also, some concepts must be indicated by an extraordinary, and sometimes even barbarous or shocking word, whereas others make do with an ordinary, everyday word that is filled with harmonies so distant that it risks being imperceptible to a non-philosophical ear. Some concepts call for archaisms, and others for neologisms, shot through with almost crazy etymological exercises. Etymology is like a specifically philosophical athleticism. In each case, there must be a strange necessity for these words and for their choice, like an element of style. The concept's baptism calls for a specifically philosophical taste that proceeds with violence or by insinuation, and constitutes a philosophical language within language, not just a vocabulary, but a syntax that attains the sublime or a great beauty. Although concepts are dated, signed, and baptized, they have their own way of not dying while remaining subject to constraints of renewal, replacement, and mutation that give philosophy a history as well as a turbulent geography, each moment and place of which is preserved, but in time, and that passes, but outside time. What unity remains for philosophies, it will be asked, if concepts constantly change? Is it the same for the sciences and arts that do not work with concepts? And what are their respective histories the histories of? If philosophy is this continuous creation of concepts, then obviously the question arises not only of what a concept is as philosophical idea, but also of the nature of the other creative ideas that are not concepts and that are due to the arts and sciences, which have their own history and becoming, and which have their own variable relationships with one another and with philosophy. The exclusive right of concept creation secures a function for philosophy, but it does not give it any preeminence or privilege, since there are other ways of thinking and creating, other modes of ideation that, like scientific thought, do not have to pass through concepts. We always come back to the question of the use of this activity of creating concepts, in its difference from scientific or artistic activity. Why, through what necessity, and for what use must concepts, and always new concepts, be created? And in order to do what? To say that the greatness of philosophy lies precisely in its not having any use is a frivolous answer that not even young people find amusing anymore. In any case, the death of metaphysics or the overcoming of philosophy has never been a problem for us. It is just tiresome, idle chatter. Today it is said that systems are bankrupt, but it is only the concept of system that has changed. So long as there is a time and a place for creating concepts, the operation that undertakes this will always be called philosophy, or will be indistinguishable from philosophy, even if it is called something else. We know, however, that the friend or lover, as claimant, does not lack rivals. If we really want to say that philosophy originates with the Greeks, it is because the city, unlike the empire or state, invents the agon as the rule of a society of friends, of the community of free men as rivals, citizens. This is the invariable situation described by Plato. If each citizen lays claim to something, then we need to be able to judge the validity of claims. The joiner lays claim to wood, but he comes up against the forester, the lumberjack, and the carpenter, who all say, "I am the friend of wood." If it is a matter of the care of men, then there are many claimants who introduce themselves as man's friend: the peasant who feeds people, the weaver who clothes them, the doctor who nurses them, and the warrior who protects them. In all these cases, the selection is made from what is, after all, a somewhat narrow circle of claimants. But this is not the case in politics, where, according to Plato, anyone can lay claim to anything in Athenian democracy. Hence the necessity for Plato to put things in order and create authorities for judging the validity of these claims, the ideas as philosophical concepts. But even here, do we not encounter all kinds of claimants who say, "I am the true philosopher, the friend of wisdom or of the well-founded"? The rivalry culminates in the battle between philosopher and sophist, fighting over the old sage's remains. How then is the false friend to be distinguished from the true friend, the concept from the simulacrum? The simulator and the friend. This is a whole Platonic theatre that produces a proliferation of conceptual personae by endowing them with the powers of the comic and the tragic. Closer to our time, philosophy has encountered many rivals. To start with, the human sciences, and especially sociology, wanted to replace it. But because philosophy, taking refuge in universals, increasingly misunderstood its vocation for creating concepts, it was no longer clear what was at stake. Was it a matter of giving up the creation of concepts in favor of a rigorous human science, or alternatively, of transforming the nature of concepts by turning them into the collective representations or worldviews created by the vital, historical, and spiritual forces of different peoples? Then it was the turn of epistemology, of linguistics, or even of psychoanalysis and logical analysis. In successive challenges, philosophy confronted increasingly insolent and calamitous rivals that Plato himself would never have imagined in his most comic moments. Finally, the most shameful moment came when computer science, marketing, design, and advertising, all the disciplines of communication, seized hold of the word concept itself and said, "This is our concern. We are the creative ones. We are the ideas men. We are the friends of the concept. We put it in our computers." Information and creativity, concept and enterprise. There is already an abundant bibliography. Marketing has preserved the idea of a certain relationship between the concept and the event. But here the concept has become the set of product displays, historical, scientific, artistic, sexual, pragmatic. And the event has become the exhibition that sets up various displays and the exchange of ideas it is supposed to promote. The only events are exhibitions, and the only concepts are products that can be sold. Philosophy has not remained unaffected by the general movement that replaced critique with sales promotion. The simulacrum, the simulation of a packet of noodles, has become the true concept, and the one who packages the product, commodity, or work of art has become the philosopher, conceptual persona, or artist. How could philosophy, an old person, compete against young executives in a race for the universals of communication, for determining the marketable form of the concept, males? Certainly, it is painful to learn that concept indicates a society of information, services, and engineering. But the more philosophy comes up against shameless and inane rivals and encounters them at its very core, the more it feels driven to fulfill the task of creating concepts that are aerolites rather than commercial products. It gets the giggles, which wipe away its tears. So, the question of philosophy is the singular point where concept and creation are related to each other. Philosophers have not been sufficiently concerned with the nature of the concept as philosophical reality. They have preferred to think of it as a given knowledge or representation that can be explained by the faculties able to form it, abstraction or generalization, or employ it, judgment. But the concept is not given, it is created. It is to be created. It is not formed, but posits itself in itself. It is a self-positing. Creation and self-positing mutually imply each other because what is truly created, from the living being to the work of art, thereby enjoys a self-positing of itself, or an autopoetic characteristic by which it is recognized. The concept posits itself to the same extent that it is created. What depends on a free creative activity is also that which, independently and necessarily, posits itself in itself. The most subjective will be the most objective. The post-Kantians, and notably Schelling and Hegel, are the philosophers who paid most attention to the concept as philosophical reality in this sense. Hegel powerfully defined the concept by the figures of its creation and the moments of its self-positing. The figures become parts of the concept because they constitute the aspect through which the concept is created by and in consciousness, through successive minds, whereas the moments form the other aspect according to which the concept posits itself and unites minds in the absolute of the self. In this way, Hegel showed that the concept has nothing whatever to do with the general or abstract idea, any more than with an uncreated wisdom that does not depend on philosophy itself. But he succeeded in doing this at the cost of an indeterminate extension of philosophy that, because it reconstituted universals with its own moments and treated the personae of its own creation as no more than ghostly puppets, left scarcely any independent movement of the arts and sciences remaining. The post-Kantians concentrated on a universal encyclopedia of the concept that attributed concept creation to a pure subjectivity rather than taking on the more modest task of a pedagogy of the concept, which would have to analyze the conditions of creation as factors of always singular moments. If the three ages of the concept are the encyclopedia, pedagogy, and commercial professional training, only the second can safeguard us from falling from the heights of the first into the disaster of the third. an absolute disaster for thought, whatever its benefits might be, of course, from the viewpoint of universal capitalism.